Hey, welcome back to Common Sense OT Security, where we solve OT security's deepest mysteries using common sense. Before we jump into today's topic, let me point out that we have a new website with a new URL. The URL is otbase.com. And you will see a lot of new content in a better organized way than before. So I just ask you to check this out and get even more information of what we do with the OT-based OT asset management system. So today we are discussing a conference presentation by Otorio's Yair. Sorry, I forgot the name, the last name, but Yair. He's the CTO and co-founder of Otorio. And Yair is presenting a methodology, I think, for quantifying risk for devices without published vulnerabilities. And if you ask me, then I think that's a rather unique proposition here, because who has this problem? Who is wondering, well, what about those products that you're using that come with no vulnerabilities? What is the hidden risk there? According to my experience, that is not a thing, because if you are engaging in OT vulnerability management, you already know you will never be able to get rid of all the known vulnerabilities. So where you do have the CVEs, etc., because it's just too many, right? Like when you're dealing with 500,000 vulnerabilities in your installed base, I would guess the last thing that you are worried about, what about those products with no vulnerabilities? Could there also be some hidden risk? The irony is, yes, there is some hidden risk, and I'm going to address that later, but it's not what Yair has in mind. So let's listen to what he's telling us and how he pitches the whole problem, for which he suggests a solution.
I'll start on the right one. We have the category where they have a lot of known CVEs. And you have there the Siemens, the Rockwell, the Schneider. It means that they take security seriously. Then we saw the second group that have between 1 to 3 vulnerabilities. Again, this is an indication that this is not systematic. And then we looked for vendors or specific products that basically have none. So for us, and we're talking about assets that has been existing for years, this tells something.
So let's try to understand this argument. All the vendors in this case, all the vendors with a lot of CVEs, according to Yair, they're good. And again, this is an argument that I've never heard before, because usually you would assume, well, that's bad, right? Whereas in Yair's presentation, as you can see, high number of CVEs is good, it's green. And the ones with few or no CVEs, that's bad, it's yellow and deep red. And again, this is an argument. I think one could say, well, it's quite an original argument, because this was, excuse me, never heard before. And why? Because it would probably also suggest that, I don't know, your Adobe Flash Player that comes with hundreds of CVEs. Oh, that's a secure product. And the vendor, Adobe, well, we all know Adobe does an excellent job at cybersecurity. But certainly that's not the case. It's just the other way around. And so I don't know about you, but I simply posit, viewed through the lens of common sense, this argument is not really appealing. And I think we get to the bottom of what Yair has in mind in this next clip that I'm going to play for you. So let's hear what he says about this risk equation that everybody knows.
Now, when you don't have any vulnerability, then usually risk is 0, and basically there's no risk based on the common risk modeling.
Well, he's damn right about that, isn't he? We don't need to worry about devices, products, configurations with no vulnerabilities. There is no risk. Okay, that's what everybody agrees to. But it appears like for Yair, he isn't happy with this risk equation. He's probably considering, well, there is this hidden risk that might be substantial, and therefore we must dig deeper into those products with few or no vulnerabilities. Now, the one question that I would have here already is, who is supposed to do that? Or do we know of any asset owner in the whole world who would say, okay, now we are pretty much done with our 500,000 vulnerabilities. We have done the prioritization, etc. But we are not finished yet. We also have to check the other products with no vulnerabilities, with no CVEs. Okay, I haven't seen that, and to me it doesn't make sense. But that seems to be the reasoning of Yair. And now let's take it a little bit further and let's learn what his concept, the CSAV concept, actually entails and how that works. So these are the various input parameters that go into his risk calculation. And what you see here is all the different ways that Yair assigns to those different factors. Basically, it's two different types of factors. On one hand, you have the vendor measures. On the other hand, you have device measures. I think this would probably be better called product measures, because they don't relate to a specific device, but to a certain product. And then these input parameters are assigned weights, and we will get in a second. We will get to the assessments and the numeric values that are assigned here. But this already gives you an idea. So Yair proposes that if, for example, the vendor has a published vulnerability management policy, that's good. That's good. If they don't have this policy, that's bad. And then he also suggests, well, maybe you can just assess the validity or I don't know, the thoroughness of that policy, which is what you see here. So you assign numerical values based on your assessment to those various factors. And let me just say I have questions here. So when we just single out this one factor, the vulnerability management policy. So I don't know about you, but I can tell you one thing. I have seen a couple of those policies from different vendors. And who is the one to judge? Let's just say I would assess, well, Siemens vulnerability management policy is shit. I don't say that. Don't get me wrong. I'll get back to that. But just if I would make that assessment, do you think Siemens would arrive at the same assessment? So my point is, this is just subjective opinion that comes into play here. This is nothing that you could measure, because you will not find a consensus here. So is there supposed to be a jury or a standards body who will assess this, and how would that work? Certainly it does not work. And if you would actually look at some vendor vulnerability management policies, you would also find, well, again, getting back to Siemens, actually, that's a lot of platitudes, like segregate your network architecture, right? And again, don't get me wrong, this is not to put a blame on Siemens, because it is what it is. OT security policies, vulnerability management policies are not complex. And in a way, you could simply say, asset owners, just get your shit done, but using the basics that everybody knows since the beginning of automation technology. It's not a secret, right? And so that doesn't really appeal to me. That if that other vendor, I'm just making stuff up here. Let's just say Beckhoff. Beckhoff has no published OT vulnerability management policy. I don't. They may have. So I'm just making this up. If only for that reason, would you imagine they're any way worse than Siemens when it comes to OT security? I don't think that. So in Yair's opinion, it's an indication that the vendor takes OT security seriously. This doesn't make any sense for me, but you're the one to judge. Do they have certifications? This is another item here. Do they provide general security guidelines? Oh, come on. I mean, so, and based on that, this is one set of factors that go into this assessment, and you assign a value of 1 to 5 for every one of these measures, as he calls it. And then you do the same thing for the device-related or product-related parameters. Potential attack surface. I don't get it. Seriously. So what is that supposed to mean? And bear with me, I'm getting back to that point. So again, so he is trying to grab something hidden, and at the same time ignoring the blatant stuff that's out there for everyone to see. And I got back to that. Do they have an IEC certification? Or, in other words, did they spend all the money to obtain that certification? I don't buy this, actually. So for me, it really doesn't compute, especially when you now consider, okay, he is somehow crunching all these numbers together to arrive at a final indicator, which pretty much resembles the CVEs base score, which I hope you all know. You're all familiar with the base score, with that value between 1 and 10. That basically suggests the badness of the CVE. And obviously, there are a lot of differences when it comes to that. But we will postpone that. So let's just look at the process that he suggests, or the actionable steps. Review most common devices in the environment. That's easy. Detect assets with no published CVEs in the asset inventory. Well, I would argue for many that's a stretch, because many asset owners don't even know the published CVEs in that affect their installed base. Certainly that does not apply to OT-based users, because we do such an excellent mapping which CVEs actually affect your installed base. And then from there, you could also deduct, or you could certainly also identify those products with little or no CVEs. Detect end-of-life devices. This is a real kicker. Just bear with me for a second. Review firmware and OS updates. So for this, I have to play this clip here, because it's so funny.
So the first one is, if I'm an asset owner, first to review most common devices in my environment. Meaning, if I have a specific vendor that I see a lot of his assets in my environment, probably this is a good place to start if I don't see any CVEs attached. The second one really is detect whether their specific vendor or those specific devices don't have any published CVEs. Right? A lot of us, and including us as a vendor, right, we're talking about visibility and vulnerability management. So there should be some things hopefully in place to help us understand where we are.
There should be something in place.
The third step is detecting end-of-life, end-of-support devices. Now, this is tricky, because we do see a lot in the OT space that not, I would say, everyone has their own visibility to that level for OT devices.
Yeah, that's really a kicker. Yair, just use OT base. It's all in there. You know, we expose the end of life status, the life cycle status. I mean, really, I have to laugh at this because if an OT security vendor tells you how tricky and difficult that would be with the CVE mapping and the end of life, the life cycle, guys, what have you been doing all these years? I mean, as far as I am told, Otorio is one of the prominent players in this space, recently acquired by Armis. What have you been doing? This is easy for OT-based users. It's absolutely easy. You just open the page, you see all the obsolete products and where they are installed. And yeah, so that certainly for me was a funny moment. And then at the end of the day, you use your risk assessment calculator, which I think they have published somewhere on their website, and then it spits out a number. Bang, like I would imagine something like 3 or 5, okay? And now let's think about what this number actually represents. I guess I made the argument already, since pretty much all of these input parameters, like the policy, the assessment of the vendor policy, etc., are subjective. What you end up is what in test theory is called an invalid measurement, or excuse me, an unreliable measurement, because different people will reach different results. So therefore, it's not really a measurement. It's just an expression of opinion. The other question that relates to the validity, and that in test theory simply is, does this test actually measure what it tells you to measure? And in this case, it's risk. Okay, so is there a real risk? Is this risk real, as many people ask? And I think the easiest way to answer this is by comparing it to CVEs. Now, here is the big difference. When you look at a CVE, it is based on a technical analysis of a specific product feature that can be reproduced in the lab. Okay, so the CVE always points to a technical behavior of the product. So, and it's based, for example, on a code review. Somebody has checked out the code and the behavior of this device, and now it gets interesting. Now, and once that this CVE or this vulnerability is established, it's deterministic. That means if you use the exploit, or you could also say the exploit code if you want to, then you will be able to compromise the device or the product. Okay, that is very much different from this proposed CSAV value, because it could just be nothing but thin air. So somebody who ran all those parameters has arrived at, there is a high score. There is probably a very important hidden risk. What does that mean? Tell me, how would you be able to exploit this vulnerability or these imagined vulnerability? And this gets us to the bottom. If you can't tell how it would be possible to take advantage as an attacker of this vulnerability, how it can be exploited, it's not a vulnerability. As simple as that. So you might still have your reservations because that vendor didn't publish a single CVE for that particular product, and just start to get your paranoia working behind the scenes. Well, I don't trust that. That's an indication for me that there is the real risk and it's hidden. I'm not that person. Just you have to decide for yourself if you are that person. So that does not make a lot of sense to me. And you just judge for yourself. But we are still not done here. So we are going to the final summary. The absence of CVEs does not equate the absence of risk. Well, guess what? He's damn right. I'll get back to that in a second. Invulnerabilities can persist undetected for years. That may even be true. But I tell you what, who cares? And why do I say who cares? Because the reality is that no asset owner is to address all or the majority of the known vulnerabilities. Nobody can do that because there are simply too many. So therefore, those hidden vulnerabilities, yeah, they might persist undetected. And guess what? There are also known vulnerabilities that are not hidden. They also persist for many years, right? But unfortunately, we cannot take care of those because our resources are limited. Therefore, we have this practice of prioritization of the vulnerabilities, okay? So again, that is, so what? That is basically response to that argument. And now let's look at the in my opinion, the most interesting aspect of this whole proposition. The absence of CVEs does not equate the absence of risk, or maybe we wanted to be a little bit more specific of cyber risk, you could probably call it. He is damn right about that. Unfortunately, he does never get to the point of that real hidden risk. Now, what do I mean by that? It's very simple. So if you are in OT security for a couple of years, you must know this, right? Otherwise, better find a job in a different industry or different field. And I'll tell you what you need to know. So when it comes to OT security, there are tons of vulnerabilities that never make it into a CVE. Why? Well, guess what? That's what we call insecure by design. We know that for decades, your OT products are insecure by design. What does that mean? That means that the legitimate ways how these products operate, how you access them using the various industrial protocols for the HMI connection, for the engineering station, etc. Those protocols do not include something like authentication and authorization. They are not encrypted. They're nothing. Your PLC, your RTU does not come with an antivirus product. It does not come with any kinds of protection. That is what we call insecure by design. And unfortunately, that has never made it into a CVE. Because many years ago, in 2010, CISA, or the predecessor of CISA, decided, oh no, that would be that would disturb people. So we reserve CVEs only for those product characteristics that are considered bugs, and they will be fixed at some point in time, like with a firmware update. And you would never be able to do that when it comes to these protocol characteristics, as an example. Let me give you another example, if only because, for no good reason, our friend Yair also references Stuxnet in this talk. You remember one of the most puzzling, distressing vulnerabilities that was exploited by Stuxnet is a legitimate product feature, and it is the capability to override the process image, right? The input process image. That is a nightmare for security people, right? So, and that made it possible to have the PLC control logic operate on invalid input values. And by the way, this has nothing to do with the roller speeds of the centrifuge. That's just bullshit. That was perpetuated by people who did never bother to actually perform a technical analysis of the code. That only happened in the first attack, on the 417, like with the pressure manipulations. Okay, So that is a feature of the product. You can override the process image, the input process image. It was built there for no good reason many times ago for simulation purposes, and unfortunately, the vendor in question never bothered to add some protective layer there, so that you, like, for example, using a key switch or something like that, you can deactivate that behavior. Okay, it's still in the product, and so that would be a very good example for a talk why you should not limit your efforts to known vulnerabilities. So this is probably how I would have set up my argument. Okay, so certainly if you only look at CVEs, you are still not quite there, because there's all this other nasty stuff, nasty with the legitimate product characteristics. That's why we call OT insecure by design. And as long as you don't address this, you haven't succeeded in OT security. The other thing, and so we are still talking about risk. We're talking about risk beyond CVEs. The other risk that you face as an asset owner is simply bugs, firmware bugs, for example, product bugs that have no cybersecurity angle, but there are still bugs. And if you are an asset owner, or let me put it this way, if you're a control engineer, you must be familiar with this whole problem area. The vendors, Siemens, Rockwell, Schneider, they publish product notices and safety advisories every now and then, which inform the customers, well, no, sorry, but we have identified this issue in, let's just say, the VFDs in your power flexes or whatnot, or in that robot, and under certain conditions, and this is zero related to cybersecurity. Under certain conditions, like temperature conditions, whatever, right? It might just fail, and it could also create a safety risk. That is real, my friends. That is a thing, and unlike cybersecurity, vulnerabilities, etc., those problems do not require an attacker or a hacker to cause problems. They will cause problems just accidentally if those right conditions are met. So that's a huge risk for anybody on the plant floor. And third, and to his credit, Yair addresses this rather briefly. Product obsolescence, right? So at some point in time, you're totally outdated, but still useful equipment. It's no longer useful. It crashes and it just corrodes away. You know, that poor old RTU is doing its thing now for 35 years, and it doesn't owe you anything at this point. And then it crashes and it can't be replaced. So that is also a real risk, completely unrelated to hackers. And if you are among those lucky customers who use OT-based, you know, in advance. I mean, just imagine. So how is this really how is this a problem at scale when you think about all those field buses? You know, DeviceNet, ControlNet, etc., Profibus. You will probably know, or you are aware that you have a bunch of those field buses, but you don't know what's on them, as long as you install OT-based, right? And you can try it out today if you want to, because you just need to download the discovery piece, OT-based network discovery, and you will see all those field buses, and you will see the devices on those field buses. And then if you take advantage of the OT-based snapshot service, it will also spit out the product lifecycle information. So you will see, they are no end of life. Boss, we probably need to do something about that. So that is all real risk that unfortunately is not addressed by Yair. And therefore my verdict is, well, his talk, his whole premise, his whole concept does not meet the criteria of common sense OT security and could well be ignored. It's not worth your time. I hope that you you still think, well, the listening to my webcast today was worth its time, because I'm not doing this to bash Yair or Otorio or Armis for that matter. No, I'm trying to give you a clear idea of what common sense OT security really means and how it's different from other approaches that you see on the conference floor, in blog posts, in media collateral, etc. Okay, see you next week. Bye-bye.